Over the past decade, the effectiveness of personal selling has plummeted by 56%.
Which is just a staggering drop.
Are we witnessing the death of the B2B salesperson? Or just a really painful evolution? In the next few minutes, we are breaking down the research into 3 sales tactics that will increase your sales.
Tactics you can actually use.
Exactly. This is Inside Sales Geek, where we translate academic sales research into practical strategies that actually work.
So glad to be here.
I'm joined by our resident expert to look at a massive 2024 study from the Journal of the Academy of Marketing Science. The researchers are Claro, Ramos, and Palmatier. And I know you've got the data in front of you. How big is this study?
It's wild. We're not looking at a small survey of a few dozen companies here. We're looking at 2 sweeping meta-analyses.
Combining what, hundreds of studies?
Yeah, over 370 independent studies. This covers 32 countries, which represents 83% of the world's GDP, and it tracks over 150,000 individual salespeople.
That is a massive data set.
It really is.
And what's crazy is that it proves this 56% drop is absolutely real. When they measure sales elasticity, which is basically just how much leverage or return you get for every dollar you invest in your sales efforts, they found it was around 34% back in 2009.
Right.
But over the last decade, it's been slashed to just 15%.
You're pushing a boulder up a hill with half the leverage you used to have.
Why is that happening?
The researchers point to 3 main drivers for this. You've got hyper-informed customers, the massive rise of digital channels, and just really intense competition. Buyers have search engines now. They don't need a walking product catalog to...
Right, the informational value of the salesperson has just been completely stripped away.
Exactly.
Which brings us perfectly to our first tactic. Stop competing with your own digital channels and become a complex problem solver.
That's exactly it. Think about your team right now. If your customer just needs to reorder basic office supplies or renew a standard off-the-shelf software license...
A digital portal does that way better.
Better, faster, and without the friction. Buyers strongly prefer autonomous, face-to-face free transactions for those simple purchases.
Here's what surprised me about this research. The salesperson isn't obsolete. The value has just shifted completely up the chain.
Precisely. Where this gets interesting is looking at high-involvement purchases.
Like what?
Okay, say a buyer is facing a really complex problem, like migrating a multi-million-dollar cybersecurity infrastructure across global offices. A digital brochure won't cut it there.
No, the stakes are massive.
Right. If they make the wrong choice, it cripples their entire operation. So the tactic here for your team is to completely transition your reps into consultative solution sellers.
So they aren't just reading off the spec sheet. The buyer already read the spec sheet on their phone.
Yeah, exactly. The rep is there to synthesize all that overwhelming information and co-create a bespoke solution with the client.
They're essentially navigating information overload to prevent the customer from making a super costly mistake.
You nailed it. The value is no longer in the product information itself. The value is in the synthesis and the application of that information to the buyer's highly specific context.
So the actionable step for you sales leaders out there, audit your team's time.
Yes, audit the calendar.
If your highly paid reps are taking basic reorders or answering easily searchable questions, you're wasting money. You need to automate the simple stuff and deploy your humans only when the problem requires human domain expertise.
That is the absolute baseline. If you don't make that shift, your reps will just continue to lose ground to digital platforms.
Okay, so if we're deploying our humans specifically for complex problems, how do we train them? I feel like we hear constantly about teamwork and internal collaboration.
Oh, all the time.
Right, we're told to break down silos and work across departments, but the research actually splits performance drivers into 2 buckets: individual drivers and team drivers.
And this brings us to tactic number 2. Prioritize individual skills over internal team networking.
Which is fascinating.
The data here is a complete pattern interrupt for modern corporate training. Individual drivers, which are those classic traits like unique skills, innate aptitude, and personal motivation, they have an 86% greater impact on performance than team drivers.
Wait, 86%?
Yeah, it's a huge cap.
That's massive. But let me push back on that for just a second.
Sure.
Doesn't a salesperson need to mobilize internal resources like marketing or customer success or the product engineers to build these complex solutions we just talked about? Why does teamwork lag so far behind?
They absolutely do need those resources, but customer loyalty in B2B sales is almost always tied directly to the individual salesperson, not the firm.
Interesting.
The buyer trusts the specific person sitting across from them who took the time to understand their unique pain points. It's the individual who uses their emotional intelligence to build that deep relationship. The firm might provide the software, but the individual provides the trust.
Here's the catch. The researchers found something they call the dark side of internal networking.
Yes, the dark side.
What exactly does that mean for a sales team?
It's the friction of corporate politics and human behavior in highly competitive environments. When reps spend a massive amount of time managing internal relationships just to get things done, their actual sales efficiency plummets.
Give me a real-world example of that.
Okay, think about a scenario where your rep has to fight 3 different internal departments just to get a custom pricing tier approved for a client.
Oh man, yeah.
You run into team conflict, you have situations where knowledge hoarding occurs, where one top performing rep won't share a successful tactic with the team because they're competing against their own peers for the exact same bonus pool.
Right. Or you have to wait 2 weeks for the legal department to review a standard contract revision, and the rep is spending all their energy just hounding internal stakeholders instead of, actually selling.
Exactly. Or you see non-reciprocated favors where a rep helps a colleague close a deal but never gets help in return.
It's exhausting.
It really is. All of this internal networking, while sometimes necessary, drains time and energy away from the external customer. So while having a good team is helpful, the individual's core skills and motivation remain the undisputed engine of sales performance.
That hits close to home for anyone who's been stuck in endless internal alignment meetings when they really should have been on a client call.
Oh, absolutely.
So the tactic here is to relentlessly develop the individual aptitude of your reps. And as a leader, you need to remove the internal bureaucratic roadblocks so they don't have to endlessly network internally just to get a deal done.
Clear the path.
Yes. Clear the path so your super salespeople can do what they do best.
The internal machinery should support the rep invisibly, not act as some obstacle course they have to navigate every single quarter.
Quick pause. If you're finding this valuable, hit subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. And share this with your sales team.
Moving on to the broader landscape, we really have to talk about geography.
Yes. Let's look at the global map from this study. 32 countries. I would normally assume that a rock-solid sales strategy in Chicago would work pretty well if you translated it and dropped it into São Paulo or Shanghai.
You'd assume that, but the data says the exact opposite.
Right.
And this leads to tactic number 3. Ditch the global standard playbook and match your structure to the specific market.
Now here's where it gets interesting. The research shows that sales efforts are actually significantly less effective in the United States compared to other countries.
It's true.
The leverage drops to almost nothing. In the study, they say the elasticity in the U.S. is 0.106, but it jumps to 0.187 internationally. Why is it so much harder to get a return on your sales effort in the U.S. than almost anywhere else?
It comes down to country development and cultural values.
Okay, break that down.
Let's look at development first. The U.S. is a highly developed market. That means there is high resource availability, incredible infrastructure, and homogeneous consumers who already have access to top-tier branded goods.
Right, so if I'm selling CRM software in the U.S., I'm not competing against a legal pad and a pen. I'm competing against 5 world-class, heavily funded software platforms.
The baseline is already incredibly high.
Yeah.
Buyers in highly developed markets are autonomous and extremely demanding. It takes a monumental effort to break through the noise and offer something so uniquely valuable that it actually moves the needle. You're fighting tooth and nail for fractional percentage points of improvement.
Okay, but wait. The research also mentions cultural values, specifically how countries view time.
Yes.
The U.S. is famously short-term oriented. We want immediate results, quarterly earnings, quick transactions. Shouldn't a highly efficient, transaction-focused salesperson actually do better in that environment?
You would think so, but it actually works against the salesperson's overall effectiveness.
How?
Because buyers typically just want the bottom line quickly. They want a bulleted email with pricing tiers rather than a 3-hour dinner. It's incredibly difficult to build deep, long-term relationships.
They just don't see the immediate utility in relationship building.
Right. And furthermore, because salespeople in these short-term cultures are often heavily incentivized by fast pay-for-performance commission structures, they don't invest the slow, unglamorous time required to develop deep customer knowledge.
The whole ecosystem is geared toward the quick transaction.
Exactly, which paradoxically makes the overall sales effort less effective and less resilient in the long run.
So if the US is essentially hard mode on the video game, where does the data say salespeople get massive returns on their efforts?
The massive opportunities are in emerging markets, specifically in countries with high unbranded competition.
Let's define that. What is unbranded competition?
In many developing nations, markets are dominated by local, generic, informal products. Think of a regional manufacturer in Brazil using a patchwork of local, unbranded software solutions.
Okay.
The needs are met, but often poorly, with no consistent quality control or brand reputation. In these environments, a skilled salesperson has a massive, wide-open opportunity.
Because they aren't just fighting over market share against 5 identical competitors, they're actually creating the market.
Exactly. They act as educators. Because the market isn't saturated, they can shape customer demands, demonstrate the value of a higher quality solution, and literally convert non-users into first-time branded product users.
Wow.
The return on investment for a salesperson's individual skills here is astronomical because they are establishing entirely new consumption patterns.
This next part is crucial. What about the cultural side in those regions? Does the way they view relationships change the sales approach?
Completely. In long-term oriented cultures, like many in Asia or South America, connectedness is prioritized. Customers actively want to build deep networks before they do business.
Why is that?
Because establishing a trusting relationship is their primary method for reducing business uncertainty and risk. They want to deeply know the person they are buying from.
So a 3-hour dinner isn't a waste of time there. It's a mandatory part of the due diligence.
Exactly. A salesperson who uses their individual skills to build trust, show empathy, and demonstrate long-term commitment will see their performance absolutely skyrocket. The culture is actively rewarding the exact behaviors that make a salesperson successful.
So tying this into tactic 3 for the sales leaders listening, how do you practically structure this across different markets?
If your team is operating in less developed emerging markets, you need to invest heavily in outside sales. Put people on the ground with high interpersonal skills.
Face-to-face.
Yes. Give them the freedom and the time to act as market educators and relationship builders. Don't drown them in internal reporting. Let them sit down with clients, understand their unique challenges, and slowly build the trust necessary to convert them from unbranded solutions to your branded offerings.
And if your team is firmly planted in a highly developed market like the US or Western Europe, where buyers are already informed and digital first?
In highly developed markets, you have to fundamentally restructure. You should strongly consider hybrid sales structures.
Meaning?
Rely heavily on digital automation and inside sales teams for simple transactional purchases. If the customer already knows what they want, get out of their way and let them buy it digitally with zero friction. Save your expensive, highly skilled outside salespeople entirely for complex, high-stakes consultative selling.
Don't waste your super salesperson's time having them take basic reorders.
Exactly. Deploy them only when the customer is facing a complex problem that a digital portal cannot solve. They become high-level consultants.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, we've covered a ton of ground, but before we wrap up, there's a really provocative question hidden in this data regarding highly developed markets.
There is. If markets like the US continue on this current trajectory, providing customers with increasingly perfect digital information and seamless autonomous buying platforms,
Right.
will the future B2B salesperson in these countries eventually stop interacting with the customer entirely?
What do you mean by entirely, like zero contact?
Think about it. If we fast forward to the year 2035, could the salesperson simply evolve into a highly specialized, behind-the-scenes internal engineer?
Wow.
Someone who analyzes customer data and customizes complex AI-generated solutions, but who never once actually shakes a buyer's hand or takes them to lunch. It's a fascinating possibility that this research hints at.
The salesperson as a silent, invisible data engineer. That's a wild thought and a total inversion of the classic, Arthur Miller archetype of the salesman with a smile and the shoe shine.
Completely different world.
Let's recap the 3 tactics you can implement tomorrow. Tactic 1, stop competing with your digital portal and transition your reps into consultative, complex problem solvers. Tactic 2, prioritize and train individual aptitude while removing internal networking bottlenecks for your team. Tactic 3, Ditch the global standard and use a hybrid model in developed markets while deploying relationship-focused educators in emerging markets. Pick one to test with your team this week, track your results, then implement the next one. This has been Inside Sales Geek, translating academic research into wins for your team.